There are a few things that nobody tells you about going from working in community mental health to working in private practice, and I will tell you, I made some huge mistakes along the way. In this video, I am going to break down exactly what not to do when making the jump to private practice from working in community mental health. For those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Kelly Stevens. I am the founder of Private Practice Pro. I teach therapists how to build thriving private practices. It is what I love to do. But let me tell you, getting to the point where I was running my own private practice, I hit some bumps along the way, and my goal is to help you not make those bumps. So let's get into the first thing to avoid doing when you are going from community mental health to private practice. Now, first things first, I've got to give you a little bit of background about where I worked before working in my private practice. So I worked in a few different places. I worked in a partial hospitalization program and an intensive outpatient program for adults with severe and persistent mental illness. I absolutely love the work I did working in community mental health, but I was ready to make the jump to private practice, and I think I just assumed that that was going to be a very easy transition. Newsflash, it isn't, and I teach therapists in my roadmap course how to make it easier, which I'll link below. But I didn't realize that when I was speaking to my clients in private practice, the way that I was talking, the way that I was communicating had to be slightly different than when I was working in community mental health. And let me explain why. When working in community mental health, I worked a lot with clients who were mandated to be in treatment or who just had to be there for one reason or another. And a lot of the clients that I worked with had been in the mental health care system for quite a while and were kind of used to just the procedures around being in partial hospitalization or being an intensive outpatient. It wasn't their first rodeo. And so a lot of the casualness that came from working with clients who had been through treatment a few times was kind of what I assumed it would be like being in private practice. What I wish somebody had told me back in the day was that when clients come to your private practice, they may be having their very first therapy experience. Now, in community mental health, that is sometimes also the case, but I would say it is more often the case when you're working in private practice. So more so than working in community mental health, you really have to establish the frame of what therapy is. And that starts on a very small level with even just the way you communicate with people when they first call your therapy office for that very first appointment. Here's what I mean. So when I worked in community mental health, I was used to clients calling a receptionist or an admin team, getting scheduled, and then the first interaction I usually had with them was in their very first session. Usually they've already had their intake paperwork filled out and they were just sitting in front of me one way or another. When working in private practice, for the most part, you are the admin person. Now, you might work for a group practice, or as you get bigger, you might hire somebody to work for your admin team. But for the most part, in the beginning, you are the one answering the phone. And so the therapeutic relationship begins from the very moment you answer the phone. And you want to be thinking about the therapeutic relationship even when you are returning a very first phone call. So this means having a professional demeanor. It means not assuming that a client is going to come into your office and be picking you as their therapist. So when I'm on that very first phone call, I spend a lot of time saying things like, it's really important that you find the right fit therapist for you. It's my job to help you find someone, and even if it's not me, I will help you navigate it and figure it out. Mistake number 2 that I made when going from community mental health to private practice was not knowing how to confidently state my fee. When I worked in community mental health, I didn't have to negotiate fees at all. Most of my clients either used their insurance or had some other kind of benefit and discussed that with the receptionist before they ever came in for a session. So when I went to work in my own practice and I had to suddenly explain what my fee was, let me tell you, I totally over-explained. I would say things like, oh, my fee is this, but I could slide and I could do this, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it was, I would slide on sessions that didn't need to slide on. I would over-explain why I didn't take insurance. And just in general, I had a lack of confidence about my fee. Nowadays, I've learned to say, my fee is $250 per session. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll go ahead and send over my intake paperwork. And then I pause. The pause is the most important part. One mistake I see so many new therapists to private practice make is not pausing and jumping in automatically to assume that the client is uncomfortable with their fee. As therapists in private practice, we have to get used to stating our fee with confidence in a relaxed tone of voice so that our clients feel comfortable as well, because they are making a decision to invest in their mental health. It's okay to state your fee confidently, and I really suggest practicing it before you have that first client conversation. And if you're in a place where you are thinking that you might raise your fee in this next year, I actually have a free guide on how exactly to do that, and I'll make sure to link that below too. Mistake number 3 is not being clear on my policies. When I first worked in community mental health, and even when I worked for a treatment center, they had their own policies and procedures. So they had policies around what to do if a client no-showed or late canceled, or how big of a balance a client could hold before they had to pay for a session. So when I very first opened my own practice, I think I just thought that all clients knew that there was a 24-hour cancellation window, and I didn't really think it through. I had kind of some boilerplate paperwork that I got. I don't even know where I got it, and it wasn't cutting it. All right. When you are working in private practice, you set the boundaries around your fee, around your no-show policy, around your social media policy. What happens if a client sees you on a dating app? What happens if a client sees you on Facebook? Whatever it is. All of those things need policies, and it is your job to sit down and really think about what policies are going to be in place for your business. And I actually suggest writing all of those things down and then making sure to include them in your intake paperwork. I will put a link below to the intake paperwork that I use now that I have better boundaries. But let me tell you, when I first left community mental health, my boundaries were not great. And please, please, please have better boundaries than I did. The very last mistake I made when going from community mental health to private practice was making the assumption that private practice wasn't lonely. I had heard from people before that I might feel a little bit lonely in private practice. I kind of thought, no way, I'm seeing clients all day. But sitting with clients is really different than being on a treatment team. And if you're working in community mental health, you're probably used to being on a treatment team where you have weekly meetings, you might celebrate holidays and birthdays and that sort of thing, and you might not have that in private practice. So one tip I love to give people, and take this one to heart, even though it seems like maybe the softball in the group, is establish a consultation group. Get to know other therapists. Not only is that good marketing, but it is also good for your mental health. If you are thinking about making the jump from community mental health to private practice, I have a step-by-step course that teaches you exactly how to do it. I'll put the link below to my private practice roadmap, and I'm so glad you're here. I have a small YouTube channel. I answer every single comment that comes my way. So tell me, what are your questions about private practice, and I'll answer them soon. See you next time.